Can everyone see me, hear me? Okay, super. Um, let's get started. Thank you all for being here, choosing this space. My name is Soumya Jain. I was a 2013 Teach for India Fellow. I taught in Pune, and then right after that, with our first brave group of 17 educators, we founded two PPP, public-private partnership schools in Pune. Um, It's under an organization called iTeach. We run 12 schools now across Pune and Bombay, serving about 4,500 students, about 3,000 alumni. Um, Before we get into objectives, let me tell you very openly and clearly that I am as clueless about systems change as anyone you will meet, which makes me a very good moderator for this session, right? Like, मेरे को बहुत curiosity. Okay, so if Raj is clueless, that's a problem because he's been doing that for 10 years. If I am clueless, it's not a problem because I don't particularly do much of that stuff. So, anyway, um, rather than calling it a large thing like system change simplified, मैंने alternate नाम propose किया था, but वो इन्होंने accept नहीं किया. Let me reframe to what I think this session really is about, or this workshop is really about, which is what are some hard lessons that people have learned while trying to work with, while trying to make non-profit and governments work together? Make sense? It's hard-earned lessons, which only after you try stuff and you fail miserably, then you try again, then you lose a lot of money, lots of hair, all of those things. That's when you learn those lessons. That's what we're trying to distill out of this, right? The point of having people who've done it and share is so you get what I want to call non-Googleable insights, है ना? If you just Google what is system change, lesson कुछ ना कुछ मिल ही जाएगा. What is the point of that? Nothing. So why come all the way here and call all three of them, right? So the point of this next hour and a half is to find non-Googleable lessons from people who've been doing it for a while, succeeding, failing on that spectrum. Does that make sense? Everyone with me? Yeah, can you give me a snap if you're like, yes, I get it, that's what I'm here to learn? If it's not meeting what you're here to learn, none of us will get offended. Please go have coffee, chai, meet someone, anything that helps. Okay? So don't worry too much about, maybe you came to the wrong place. It's totally fine. Okay? Cool. Okay, awesome. Let me introduce the panelists. Actually, let me give the structure, then I'll introduce the panelists and we'll dive into it. Okay? We're going to break this next hour and a half. I forgot. 75 minutes. 75 minutes, I knew that. In two parts. Part one is I have 2 or 3 big questions to ask our panelists. So that'll be a little bit like a, just discussion here. And then we're going to break into 3 groups, because all 3 of them work at very different altitudes. So one person will be here, one person at the back, one person there. And then the second half is for you to choose one of them, go to them, and use it as time with an experienced person, time with, I know if I say expert, Raj will interrupt me and say I'm no expert and all that. So time with somebody who's tried it for a while. Yeah, get their insight. What I expect out of the first part is hopefully everyone can synthesize 2 or 3 most important principles of a successful collaboration between non-profits and the government. That's your exit ticket. If you can articulate those 3 principles to me, you've succeeded in the first 30 minutes. The second 30 minutes is I'm hoping that you take your specific context and problems to our panelists. So I work in this is what my organization is trying to do, or I am a government official, this is what I want from non-profits. Can you give me advice on how to solve this particular challenge that I have? Does that make sense? Yeah? So pehla 30 minutes mein, keep an eye that next 30 is coming up and that I have time with somebody who's doing it to ask them contextual problems and get their advice in. Yeah? Okay. Venil? Thank you. Okay. Super. Let's move to panelists. Jayashree, can you wave? Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. Jayashree works at the Akanksha Foundation. The Akanksha Foundation is one of the largest public-private partnership school networks. They run 26 schools across Nagpur, Pune, and Bombay. About 3 years ago, Akanksha decided to not be, in their own words, islands of excellence. So schools जहाँ पर की बहुत अच्छी चीजें हो रही हैं, but आसपास the schools are not so great, but literally build a bridge from their excellent schools to all of the other schools in their district. Very creatively, they came up with the name Setu, which means bridge. So their project is called Project Setu in two cities, in Nagpur and in Pimpri Chinchwad. Both have about 120 to, how many Nagpur? 200 together. So together about 250 schools. Jayashree's team is responsible for taking excellent practices from Akanksha and then influencing these other schools nearby, 250 schools in these two cities, to adopt them and to grow along those three axes. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, snaps for Jayashree, please. Thank you. Um, Raj leads a non-profit called Lend a Hand India. Raj, wave hi. Okay. Lend a Hand India fundamentally believes that too much education is through reading and writing, and we all need to be learning much more by doing. Lend a Hand India, they do a lot of work now, but the core of it is they've developed a curriculum called Multi-Skill Foundation course, and now it has many branches, but the first product was Multi-Skill Foundation course, agriculture, food processing, 8 such skills that students learn in 9th and 10th grade, sort of what is normally called vocational skills. Hai na? So vocational but done mainstream in school every day. They piloted that in 5 schools in Pune. It worked really well. And then comes the genius, right? What Raj and his team did was got that curriculum adopted by the Maharashtra state government and offered as a legit subject in grade 10 syllabus. So the idea is not anymore कि after school करना है आपको या Saturday Sundays को करना है, but do it as a full-time subject. Making use of this landmark thing that Raj and his team was able to do. I teach as an example now, runs multi-skill foundation course as a full-time subject in all our 12 schools. Yeah, and so does the Kanksha and many other schools. I think 300-400 schools across Maharashtra. 600 schools across Maharashtra have now adopted it. So they have dropped one subject out of the 6. For example, I teach has dropped Hindi as a subject and has replaced it with multi-skill foundation course. Raj now works, ये जो काम है, he's replicating it in 20 states. Yes. 20 states, he's trying to replicate this. At the same time, they're building 2 schools of specialized excellence in Delhi, which are skills-based schools. At the same time, he's trying to figure out how to get these skills in the national curriculum framework so that students start doing some of these things from grade 6 onwards. Yeah? Okay, so that's for Raj. Thank you. And Wendy founded Teach for America in 1991. I hope everyone knows that. If not, homework karo please ghar jaake. But Wendy, as a graduate student, as part of her thesis, conceptualized the Teach for America program, the core, then piloted it in a pilot, kya bolenge? Because the pilot had 500 fellows in the first year. Is that right, 500? So hard to say pilot when you're starting with 500, but let's just say pilot. Piloted 500 fellows in 1991 after leading Teach for America for about 20 years. Yeah. She then felt that there were so many other countries who were trying to replicate the program, TFI being one, that it was time to build an organization that would catalyze the work in other countries of this work, right? Of this leadership movement of leaders towards eradicating educational inequity. So she founded Teach for All, currently is the CEO of Teach for All, which is now in 62 partner countries. 62 partner countries across the world. She's been looking at examples of success and failure from everything from classrooms to what are alumni doing, to what are organizations doing, to system change. And I just think it's fascinating to have somebody like that at that altitude being able to share with us what it takes to potentially influence systems and make these collaborations work. Yes? Then snaps. हर बार पूछूंगा मैं लोग height से. Awesome. Okay, let's get started. Jayashree, if you can start us off, would love to hear top success story of your collaboration with the 2 governments that you're working with. What do you think like you're really happy about in the past 3 years that you've been doing this?
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. पहले तो 2 साल में success story at system change is a little difficult to say, to be honest. It takes so much time. Many of you worked here. First 2 years, or in the first year, the success stories, we used to feel 90% attendance workshop के है, engagement score 3.5, 3.6 आ गया, NPS score अच्छा आ गया. That was all of that. Somewhere there was that hollow feeling कि ये numbers है, it's not really, doesn't mean anything. Then you start to look at smaller examples. There are some, adoption of practices. एक दो school में changes आ रहा है. That also felt like, हाँ ठीक है. But this year, for the first time, me and the team is really feeling that कुछ तो सही हो रहा है. And that is, we have about 40 champions in the system who are in smaller groups working with us, but taking whatever they're learning through exposure visit, through trainings, through all of the read to lead programs at 8:30 in the night, which they have started by themselves, and they're reading all of these books, all of that through trainings, through clusters to their stakeholders. So that creating those champions feels like is the right way to do, and they are the ones who are taking this forward. So I would say that's the initial success that we are seeing in the third year now of the work.
And who are these champions?
So these are HMs, teachers, full-time into what they're doing, but after their school hours, they sit back, they study, they learn, and they create the modules for the trainings, and they're going and training their stakeholders. So Balwadi trainers, English as second language trainers, teacher mentors, and HMs. For each stakeholder group, there is a champion group who are called master trainers and mentors, and they're taking the learning to their stakeholders.
That's amazing.
So we are in the background.
Got it. And do they get paid for this additional work?
No.
Do they get time off for this additional work?
There's only one group, which is a teacher mentor group that gets additional time.
Okay.
They are completely out of the classroom right now. But HMs, Balwadi, and English as second language, they are full-time into their duties. And whatever preparation and learning they need to do is either on the weekends or after school hours. And they are doing it, they're enjoying it, and there are more members who want to join the group.
Wow. And these 40 champions are reaching out to how many total people, like all of these educators?
Over 1,000 educators, including the HMs.
Wow. So these 40 are now training about 1,000 of them in your third year of implementing this program in both cities, PCMC and Nagpur.
Nagpur, we're still waiting for more people to join, English especially as a cadre, but HM and Balwadi in both the cities, and in PCMC, all stakeholders have their champions, internal champions who are doing the trainings.
Amazing. And tell me one maybe concrete practice that you think has shifted, let's say in some group, let's say 100 teachers, कि ये पहले करते थे और now this practice has shifted, like I'm seeing this happen, or with HMs maybe.
I think one big practice is getting some voice. This is very basic. Giving some voice to children in the classroom is visible in smaller parts in all the schools. Whether it's co-creating displays for the classroom, but with the children, smaller group work and giving children that space to do it. Having classroom libraries, which the students are managing their own library, and they have library champions. So the students have complete ownership of which books, they want to take it, and teachers don't have interference as much as possible in that. So giving children that voice in different bits and pieces, I think is one big practice. It's very subtle. It is seen in different ways, but I think that is what we are really valuing, because that is the real change that we would want to see one day.
And is that a priority that you set out, saying we would like more partnership between students and teachers, or is that something that emerged after you got started?
So your LFAs, log frameworks, right? They all talk about student learning outcomes and literacy, numeracy. You need to have English as second language. You need to have early childhood preparation. So those are the numbers that you look for. But I think with the values that we work with and child at the center, whether in Akanksha, IT schools, and many of these, child at the center comes first. And I think that is what is driving all of this. That while the numbers are, everybody will chase, but what needs to change is the culture. What needs to change is bring the child at the center. I think that is what is driving it. These are There is no LFA, there is no framework that says, okay, we will see these indicators, but I think our values are driving that throughout the program. So it's a balance of both culture as well as the numbers.
Got it. And quickly, can you run us through maybe the steps of creating these champions?
So I'll simplify this,
Yes.
and we were reflecting. I think that's a big part of it. Whatever work we do, if we reflect more very often, then you can really look at some of the insights to this. And one of the big reflection is very simplified. It's a lesson plan. You start with the hook. You start with your objectives. You start with the hook. We did that for about a year and a half. Really try to create that interest. Let's go on exposure visits. Let's get some really inspiring people in the space. Let's listen to people. So there's a lot of that, hooks and I do, and then we realized that I do has reached that maxima that you cannot do anymore. We need to move into we do, and that is where that is the third step. And the minute we said, this is done, I do phase is over, we're doing we do, we had many hands, up saying that we are happy to join this because what it would be like and how we are excited about this because we see this as a personal journey of learning, and at the same time we see this as a journey for my colleagues and my co-workers to be on, and we feel confident looking at you that we could try and recreate or maybe do even better than you. So that gave us that to said this is the right time and let's go ahead. So it's like a lesson plan, and
Yeah.
I think by next year we should be completely out, and it should be you do independent learning, and we are in the background and just watching, how
Yeah.
things are happening. So that's the aspiration.
Amazing. And so your general, like the aspiration to create communities of learning led by them, and you will sort of be at the back end to
Absolutely.
fuel that community of learning, but it's led by that group there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Got it. Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing, Jayashree. That's really, it's such a clear vision almost in my mind. अच्छा ऐसा ऐसा कर सकते हैं. Amazing. Raj, tell us about your top success story of partnering with the government.
First of all, I must acknowledge Soumya here. He's being very humble. Anybody who can make government pay for his own work is the epitome of system change. So we may not call it that or whatever. So let's clarify, acknowledge that first. And I have some of my colleagues here. So I wanted to Tushar, Paridhi and Deepika here. So actually they are the one who are doing all the work. I show up in the panels like this, and claim credit. So I just wanted to acknowledge them as well. Now, I think in terms of our most milestone, almost like when I tears in my eyes, because that shows ki kuch bada hua hai, is when the Maharashtra government recognized this vocational education or skill education as a subject. Otherwise, normally all of you must have seen SUPW, social useful productive work, which many times is some useful period wasted, and all. And in the process, this kind of skill education was never taken seriously in the process. So it was a 7 to 8 year long journey to go through that when it became a sort of 100 marks subject with a board exam and sector skill council and otherwise. And I would say that it is more successful as well because it taught us a lot. It was the first of its kind, and you can imagine jab pehli baar if there is a French being introduced first time in the school, right, or in the country or in the state, what will need to happen? So you need to have model papers, model answers, curriculum, textbooks, teachers, everything, right? So it's the same thing here that we have to do. And then because the government didn't want to add to the students burden, it's wrong to call it burden, but there they said something has to come out, in order to add this. Otherwise, everybody comes and keeps adding environment, yoga, ethics,
Yeah.
whatever. So that's why then the decision. So then we have to drop something, right? Now, what do you drop it? So then that third language came up as an option, but then as soon as that came out, then so third language is mostly Hindi, because Marathi or English medium schools and all. So the Hindi teachers are up in the arms कि मेरे job का क्या होगा? What and rightly so, right? Anybody will feel that way. If I am a Hindi teacher, I'll also feel the same way. Uh, so then we had to come up with other solution that can we divide the dropouts into some way? So that's when the next solution come that we will also give option to drop social science. Please don't kill me. These are not I have nothing against social science or anything. Just to make the policy work, right? Given the constraints we are in. And with that, what we are able to do that in a classroom, some students will drop Hindi, some students will drop social science. And in the process, nobody's job will be in danger, right? So many times I think the thing is key, even though ideal situation might be something different, ideal solution could have been something different, but then you have to accommodate all the stakeholders, as we call it, in order to make it sustainable. And very happy to share that once we are able to do it here, then Maharashtra became example for Gujarat, Gujarat became example for Andhra, and now the same kind of a scheme of marks was adopted by multiple states after that. But having that done, and I know these are election times now, so 2014, yes, it was 8th August 2014, the model code of conduct was about to be announced, and this decision was taken on the very last meeting of the ministry, and then the Congress lost its majority and BJP came, right? So it was very right. The time sensitivity and other things to do certainly helped us from what I can say has been the future. And then I think it getting recognized as a subject will bring trainer, teachers and other resources and seriousness about the course and otherwise too. So I would say that was probably the most significant, milestone. And now it has been 10 years now, but still I think that remains to be the, I don't think we are working for last 10 years anymore, 10 saal kar diya. Yes.
That's amazing, yeah. And I love how you shared so clearly, because all of us have seen or read policies that are great on paper, but then just don't get implemented. And I love that your role in it was to find a solution that, no, it needs to work. Like we need to figure out how to, like a workable policy is really difficult to come up with, right? That's amazing. Tell me, I mean, how did you even did you plan all of this out, or it happened along the way, and now in hindsight you're like, "Ha, socha tha, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3," or did you actually think, "I'm going to do it only in a few schools, and then I'm going to just work really hard to get this adopted"? How did you? What was your vision when you started off?
So I should also acknowledge one more person who is not in the room here. That's my 3/4 better half, Sunanda. Actually, this is her dream, and her mission, Lenda in India. I was working in corporate world at the time and then crashed her party in 2011, So I just want to, I think, of course, there is a plan, there is a dream and other things too, but I just think that every day you give your 150%, right? I mean, that is all, because I think most of the times the things will not go according to plan, 80% of the things and all that. So you look for what is the opportunity at that particular time and grab it and run with it. So to tell you the example, when we were trying to get this policy going, the Secretary of Education in Yashda in Pune, we had conducted an orientation seminar of, multiple principals and district education officers and everybody, and this policy was new, to come through. And literally 10 minutes before the whole event was to begin, she was to inaugurate, she asked me, ki, Raj, what do you think I should announce here so that people will get on, on the bandwagon, or whatever we are about to undertake, because it's such a major thing. And it was November 14, I still remember, that. In fact, pretty much close to where we are today. I said, ma'am, announce kar do ki Lend a Hand will implement the program on a pilot basis in 10 schools in Bombay and 10 schools in Pune. This year, no? So not next year. And we are already in November, so almost like more than half of the time is gone. And, and that announcement, so we still had to go through school selection, setting up the lab, select the trainer, this and other things too. She announced it, and then we launched our program in Jan first week, in that, right? And it went on for, even though it was 3-month truncated program, but grabbing that opportunity of a top state level bureaucrat asking you what can be done, and on the spot you sort of committing to it, and of course delivering it, and all that, as sort of I would think those cannot be planned, right? Such instances cannot be planned. You have to just take a leap or leaps of faith, to make it happen. And because and I think working with the government, because we were able to deliver on it, so that Secretary of Education, who is now actually MMRDA head, has become one of the biggest fan of Linda Henry, right? Whenever I go to her, she's always there to sort of, support or whatever, because we delivered, her mission on that day, which was nowhere planned. And my people are horrified, now we have to launch it. Are we talking about next academic year or this academic, year? No.
Fantastic. That's so good to hear. Let's move to Wendy. Hi. Your top success story. And I like studying these success stories and inferring my lessons from it, inferring my vision, driving energy from it. My sense of possibility goes up. कि अरे ये भी हो सकता है. And that's kind of why I'm diving into these stories, rather than give me a framework, what works, like tell me what has worked and let me figure out what can I take away from it, है ना?
Yeah. I've been sitting up here trying to figure out which story I should use. I guess, and I just have to start with one. I mean, so much of our discussions, and first I just have to say it's so inspiring to be here on this panel with you all and to hear these examples, which resonate so much with what I've seen over time as well. I think we tend to talk about system change as policy change. And I don't know if in other sectors it makes sense to do that. In this world of ours of education, I just feel like this makes no sense. Like, to actually change outcomes, we would need to change the policy and the practice and the culture of the system. So when I think about like, okay, what's an example of where we've seen that kind of system change? I'm going to use an example from my own country because that's where I saw it at a deep altitude. And we were talking this morning about, but I'm going to share this because of a particular example. So New Orleans, Louisiana was one of the first 6 placement sites of Teach for America. And when we started placing there, and so this was back in actually 1989 is when we started. So 1990, we placed our first teachers in New Orleans. And walking around the schools in New Orleans, I truly felt like I was just seeing a crime scene. The 8th graders were, if we were lucky, they were on a 2nd grade level. I mean, there were kids in closets. Like, I just remember these images. It's just like, what is happening? And honestly, we worked there for 10 years, and I still, every time I went, I felt like I was just seeing the same thing. It just felt like somehow nothing, like we weren't gaining traction, like things were not changing for kids. The only thing that would change is like every very few months, the superintendent would change. And there became a point where finally things did start changing. And I watched the New Orleans school system radically change in 10 years. I mean, all the data points would show that, right? Like, not even half the kids were graduating from high school, and that went to almost 80%, like basically average for our country. Even the percentage of those graduates, so many more graduating, and the percentage of them going to a 4-year college went up by 15 percentage points. The percentage of kids in failing schools went from like 63% to 6%, but every metric, and still, like, that system needs so much more improvement. It kind of went from an F to a see, you know, and there's much more to be done. But there was a particular moment, and you know, there was a lot that went into that change. There was a big storm, which led the school board to just say, we're shutting down schools for a whole year. And that was the window of opportunity, because that's just not okay. So it enabled the state to kind of take over the system. And at that point, we had placed 1,200 people there over many years. And people really got together and said, let's go. A lot of people had left. They taught for 2 years, and then and people were like, let's go. Let's go do what can be done in New Orleans. And for a decade, 40% of the schools were led by Teach for America alumni who were principals. 30% of the whole teaching force were Teach for America alumni. 30% of the State Department staff members were TFA alumni. They were running 50 NGOs. It just became like, let's go. But the moment I was going to share is that 10 years into all this, we went on, I was going on school visits, and I was seeing all these teachers who seemed like they were just long-term veteran teachers from the system, teaching on a mission, like making it happen for kids. And then we had stepped back after the school visits to debrief with all these people who'd been part of this journey, like the Teach for America alumni. And I said, can I just ask, all those teachers, because the percentage of Teach for America people went down over time, all those teachers, were those the same teachers in the system? Before, when the 8th graders were on the 2nd grade level and the kids were being stuck in the closets. And they were like, yeah, the adults, they just changed. And it kind of, I don't know, this moment, it kind of showed the culture of the system changed. It showed us that, wow, we'd given up on the people in the system, but people have the potential to change. Most people are a product of their cultures. And so it was just that's my most present example of wow, you can really, and the work you're doing, it resonates so much because it's so similar.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, no, that what you started with is so important to keep in mind. All the people all the people who are working together with their own agendas, own constraints, everyone, the culture has to shift for that system change to actually happen. And while that's a good how key point, it also sounds so hard, my God. Anyway, we'll live with it. Thank you for sharing that. And so sort of then asking you the big question, right? And we'll do one more round, just like this, what would be your top 2 to 3 things that you kept in mind, you kept telling your team, saying, hey, we've got to stick to this if this is going to work, right? And as guiding principle as you can make it versus believe in everyone. What does that mean? Every day. I think. So, what would be your top 2, 3 guiding principles that you kept telling your team? Mantras. This we have to get right. Only then do we stand a chance at success.
Again, a disclaimer. We didn't start with that on the first day of the project. It's kind of, again, you go through an experience and you realize we need to come back and say, what is our principle and why are we doing something or why are we not doing something? So, the top 2, 3 that come to my mind, I think first one was operate with empathy. Empathy for all stakeholders, top, down, bottom, up. We've heard many, frustrating stories of have to sit outside in the offices for 4 hours, 5 hours. Nobody gives us time. And it just kind of, even yesterday I heard somebody say, it's this just doesn't end. And then on the other hand, if you flip that, and when I'm sitting with the team, our water is over, there's no food, raat ko 10 baj gaye hai, we're still waiting to get that one letter signed. we just turn that and say, while we are sitting outside, there is somebody sitting inside till 10 in the night, and that line of people who are coming to get their files and letters signed is still not getting over. So is there a space for empathy on both the sides? And I think that at every time when we go to school, you see an HM who is about to retire, going through a lot of her own health issues, probably a lot of family issues, and there are all of these administrative things that are coming, and there is new thing that we're expecting. Is there an empathy on that side as well? So multiple levels, and I can just go on, and I think that is what kept us going, gave us, and I think that is what gives us the strength, patience, and helps you build trust, because there is, when you start thinking about others that way, others also start thinking about you that way. And they also see, while we are waiting, you're also waiting till 10 in the night, and you're also waiting to get that done. So you do mean something really serious, and you really want to do something for children and for our schools. So next time you're not waiting for 4 hours, you're waiting for 3 hours. But but at the end of it, at least you have the recognition that, really sorry you had to wait for this long, but you saw what was happening. And I said, yes, we realized that, and wish we could do something about it, but we can't. So that is the first, I think, operating principle, no matter in the field or in the office, wherever that we go.
That's so on point. I'll quickly add in one experience from my. So I don't do any of the government partnerships work. Like I said, I'm the most clueless person to be running a panel like this. But my partner, both of us lead ITs together, Neha, she handles all of the government partnerships for ITH. And कुछ तो था, उसकी टीम छुट्टी पे थी या जो भी था, और शी वाज स्ट्रेच थी, 4 जगह आग लगा हुआ था, तो आई हैड टू गो एक दिन कि भाई एडिशनल कमिश्नर से यू हैव टू गो मीट, एंड हाँ अपन टाई वाई पहन के पहुंच गए थे, एंड सेम थिंग राइट, आई एम फ्रस्ट्रेटेड, 1 घंटा हो गया, 2 घंटा हो गया, 3 घंटा हो गया. Finally, I just got the meeting and we just started chatting. So some people who were protesting against bad management of rains in Pune barged into the office with a full camera crew. And aisa nahi ki they just barged in with some slogans. They brought a boat with them to prove their point कि पुणे में इतना water logging हो रहा है, we need to now be using boats, right? So the additional commissioner's office, and there's this, we're trying to have this conversation about some enrollment, something, and पीछे से media crew with a boat has walked in, and this guy's like, all right, man, I'm going to talk to you later. And I was like, no, I get it. आप पहले boat solve करो. I'll come to you tomorrow. Don't worry. You solve this boatman issue that has happened to you. And exactly right? It's just 4 hours, and my empathy for all that's happening just shot up, So it totally, so on point. Jayashree, just in the interest of time, I'm going to move there because नहीं तो वो small group time कम हो जाएगा,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Raj. Top lesson. I'm going to change the question to say only one. Top lesson. Yes.
Yeah, I think the top lesson would be that I would say no logo, no ego. In that, right? Because
Rhyme करके आए.
because when you are working with the government or any such long-term change and otherwise too, you have to take yourself out of the equation. Otherwise, we have seen many times, and we are nowhere close to following that 100%. But I think we are on that journey, and I would say that since we got on that journey, life has been pretty easy, in that, right? In that sense. But otherwise, most of the time, we fight for something, or why my logo is not there, why my credit is not there, why this thing not happened, and other things too. And then in the process, we lose our brain cells, we lose our concentration and focus in the process. And then in any case, nothing comes out of it, at the end of the day. And I joke with people, the curriculum is the easiest, delivering into the school, So whether you want to, copy it or whatever, it doesn't sort of, matter, right? So I would say that would be something, which, and plus one to empathy, which, she spoke about. But third one, quickly, I would say that system change, it has to be in your DNA. It can't be ki, today I'll think about it and tomorrow if the government official meets me, then I'll do it. And otherwise I won't. Then it's not going to go anywhere. It has to be ki, this is the way I'm going to do it. and this is the only way I'm going to do it, then it will, happen, right? Not otherwise. No? So that is what will keep you going to handle all the frustrations, everything too, right? If you have done it as a optional, that ho gaya to kar denge, and all that, then it's not, that. So.
Amazing. And Raj, let me ask a follow up there, just because one is running in my mind. I don't know if resonates with people कि यार एक तो एनजीओ सेक्टर में काम कर रहे हो, ठीक है? So equity, पैसा वो सब तो वैसे ही चला गया. And now Raj is saying recognition भी नहीं मिलेगा. I mean the one thing you could कि okay I have logo, somebody gave me award. Now he's saying कि वो सब भी नहीं मिलेगा. So very honestly I'm asking, what do you tell your staff here कि
I think they can answer. The staff is here.
Yeah.
Seriously.
How do you deal with this कि logo भी नहीं मिलेगा अभी, recognition भी नहीं चाहिए, सिर्फ काम होगा. Like, does that not get in the way of your just motivation?
Well, not really. I feel like we have instances because coming out of TFI in 2022, I just saw one thing that the shift from classroom to the state government, and then the element that I was looking at, the kids and the kind of an impact, I was blown up with the kind of a respect I got first from the principals, because I was placed in a school where school teacher and principal was not on our side, where on the other side they were always open. And when I entered, I could see the kind of a magnitude I was working with. From one classroom of 88 students, my magnitude has now become to 12 students, 12 schools to almost 4,000 students. So I think that is what helped me going, and that one kid who I can place it on the internships and who could explore his why, I think that is what something I drive me towards it. Yeah. Do you want to add something?
Got it. So, no answer. He basically said impact keeps me going. चमका यार, वो तो पता था यार. उसमें क्या? मतलब thanks, no, I really appreciate it, but कहाँ तक है? पैसा भी नहीं, recognition भी नहीं.
Then what I would say,
So LinkedIn पे post नहीं करना है?
हाँ.
What? What is the point of coming to this conference अगर LinkedIn
I
पे post
know.
नहीं करना है?
Yes. No, and I think at some point you realize that the cause is much bigger than you, right? In that. So, for example,
Vision, okay, got it. Vision, impact.
What I mean is ki now the work which we are doing now with the change in national curricular NEP and national curricular framework, the whole thing is going to go from 15,000 schools to 200,000 schools now, across India. So, what better recognition can be there, that you played some role, right? I mean, everybody, that you played some role into doing that. And I think that is much more than any awards or any sort of, this thing, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, no, I think that is I think what I'm also taking away from that is it needs some inner work, right? You're saying it has to be in your DNA, and like you got to keep your recognition, your logo, ego out as inner work almost to do it, which I think is really, really powerful and difficult to do.
It's not easy. Yeah?
No, that's why I say very difficult to do. इसलिए मैं सब करता नहीं ना. So, Wendy, and then we're going to break into small groups. Yeah.
First, +1 to both of those big lessons around empathy and no ego. I mean, it resonates so much. I'm going to share, we talk a lot across Teach for All about collective leadership, about the big central lesson of this work being, if we're going to change systems, we need collective leadership. But what is collective leadership? And, we've kind of developed this 4-part definition of what is collective leadership, but it's really based on what for me have been 4 big lessons about really what does it take to change systems. So first of all, we think, okay, collective leadership is people around the whole ecosystem, every level of the education system, people outside the system, advocates pushing on it, social innovators making up for the gaps in the system. It takes leaders at all levels and leaders throughout the ecosystem. And that's just rooted in realizing, as I was looking across communities, honestly, with enough leadership, you can change anything. I would be sitting in a meeting in one community with people saying, hey, we're not that community with the mayor who, does X. We're here and we have this union leader. And at that point, I was just realizing, yeah, and there's another community that's realizing those union leaders are people too. And actually, you can have one union leader or another union leader. You could have a union leader who puts kids and teachers at the top of their priority. So you start realizing, wow, if you have enough people throughout, you can actually move the system. So part of it is just like enough of a critical mass of people who share, and this is part two, the same purpose. And maybe purpose broadly defined, like we are on a mission to make this system work for kids, like to the point about putting kids at the center. And I think that can't be a surface level shared purpose. Like it has to be enough people who at the bottom of their heart just feel like we have to change this system. And what we've seen is that, I don't know, there are probably lots of ways to develop shared purpose. I think our experience has led me to think it takes a lot of intentional cultivation. Like these 2-year experiences, like that's a lot, and they're transformational for people. And we watch, I mean, now there's a lot of research that shows what people think at the beginning and what people who just almost get into the fellowship but don't, what they think, and then what those two groups think 2 years later. And it's like, whoa. I mean, the researchers are like, we've never seen effects like this in terms of how much more people come to believe in their students, believe in their communities, believe in their own ability to make a difference, you know, et cetera. So shared purpose. Thirdly, it has to be a diverse group. Like we need the people with the most privilege, and we need the people who've experienced the inequities we're addressing. And if you don't have both, and especially representation among the folks who've experienced the inequities, it actually doesn't work. And the first place I truly saw that, like where I knew for a fact, we could debate about how important is diversity. Like if we had a whole bunch of privileged people who all went to New Orleans, would it work? And you could say, I don't know. I mean, a good teacher is a good teacher as long as they care about their kids, they're checking their biases. I sat there in New Orleans and realized, oh no, it does not work without people from the community, because the problem is you cannot have a system led by people who the kids can't see themselves in. Like you have to model the world you want. So I just realized from that, and also it doesn't work to only, I mean, we know how the world works, right? Like you need the people with the privilege because they've still got the privilege and they're still controlling a lot of the strings, and they too need to be in the work and with proximity. So just the power of diversity. And the final thing is like with the networks and relationships and the muscle to step up from individual pursuits and learn together and collaborate and think together about what progress are we making? Where are we disagreeing? Like, let's have the debates rather than just retreat into our silos, you know, and let's think together about what do we need to do to accelerate progress towards this vision. This last piece, I mean, I've just seen these incredible examples of where we have all the other three pieces, like people on the same mission, in charge of everything, really diverse group of them, and we're not seeing the aggregate progress. And in fact, they couldn't even tell you we're making any progress, we're not, and they're all angry with each other out of, not because everyone doesn't believe that we need to put kids first, but because I think we should do X, and they think it has to be within the system. They think it has to be outside of the system. Let's just stop talking to each other. So we're kind of replicating. So how do we, this is our big learning question across Teach for All, because we've seen so few people and communities actually figure out how to do that. Like how do we do the convening piece where we're really learning together and course correcting and accelerating progress?
Fantastic. Let me see if I got that right, okay? I'm going to flood the system with diverse people who have a shared purpose and a reflective community.
Yes, although the only thing I would say is I wouldn't say flood the system because it's true that there are people in the system.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be from within, it could be a combination, but yes, the 4 parts, yes.
Understood. Thanks, man. I got 3 out of the 4 right, so I'm okay. 75% mastery is not bad. I have the 3 lessons down. I hope you all do too. Empathize, no logo, no ego, and some word of flood which we'll replace. But for now, placeholder word, flood the system with diverse people, a shared purpose, and reflective community. Awesome. We're going to move into part 2. Thank you all so much for that. This is where you have 30 minutes with somebody who's tried this for many years and with many people and has advice to give for your context. Jayashree is going to be here, Raj is going to be there, and Wendy is going to be all the way at the back there. Yeah? Just like find a chair, sit, make some kind of a semicircle around, come back in exactly 30 minutes. Go.